Here they come in. Here we go. Bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome, everybody, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, to the Islamic Courses session titled Book Review Discussion, The Muslim Heritage of Bengal, the lives and thoughts and achievements of great Muslim scholars, writers, reformers of Bangladesh and West Bengal. Okay, so we're very honored and privileged to have the author of the book, Mohammed Mojlum Khan, a good friend of mine from the Bengal Muslim Research Institute, BMRI, okay, which is based in the UK. Just a reminder for everyone, for security reasons, please display your full name on your device. Very, very important. A kind reminder to everyone, housekeeping rules. Keep your phones or devices on silent. It is being recorded. So if you haven't left your email address, if you haven't registered, leave your email address on the chat. And there is a Q&A session as well. Okay, it's just a Q&A session as well. So just want to make sure as everyone comes in, yes, please put yourself on silent. You can put your pictures there. You can put your camera. You can show your cameras. That's not a problem. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to start. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Right, so for people who don't know, the Muslims in Bengal have a very rich and diverse cultural history spanning more than a millennium. However, the existing literature on the subject has been written somewhat from a secular or nationalistic or sectarian or even an Orientalistic perspective, which regards the history of the area of the Bengal where the Muslims are having no more than a footnote to Greater India. Okay, and it tends to be either Northern Indian-centric, Pakistani-centric, or whatever centric you could think of. It's not really thought of. The area itself has its own interesting dynamics or so. So we're going to be talking about an Islamic perspective on the subject, which was somewhat overlooked. And there are other great books like Richard Eaton and then local Bengali folks as well who've written on the subject and others within the Indian subcontinent. But, you know, in this book, we're going to attempt to move beyond existing ideological interpretations and pursue an Islamic approach. The Bengali Muslim-speaking world has around 200 million people, and it constitutes one of the largest linguistic groups in the Muslim world, second only to the Arabs. If the Bengali-speaking people are a minority, minority in the subcontinent, then Bengali Muslims are not a minority in the Muslim world. So it covers around, this book covers around 800 years of history of Islam in the region, and it's considered a pioneering, authoritative sort of contribution to the subject and aimed at a new generation of students, scholars, and readers. It's around 8 years ago. We did launch it. Myself and Mojlum Bhai, we were both involved. He was a writer and I was involved in some capacity, and at the same time launched it. So inshallah, I'm going to introduce you to the subject. That's the introduction subject. About Mojlum Bhai, he's an award-winning writer, critique and research scholar. He's published over 150 essays and writings and translated many of his books into Bangla, Bengali, Indonesian, German, Arabic. And so his best selling book you might have heard is the Muslim 100, published in 2008. And he has others as well on thoughts on Islam, contemporary issue. He's a fellow of the Royal Asiatic Society of Great Britain and Ireland, and a founding director of the Bengal Muslim Research Institute. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome our presenter, Mojlum Bhai. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and everybody watching or listening. Jazakallah khair. Thank you for the invitation, and good to join you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to start off. I'm going to be like a, tell me something about the book. Why did you write it? Why do you think it was important? What's the value add? Also, for the next, let's just talk about this for the next 20 minutes or so, and I'll try and interlude with some questions. Bismillah.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, Mizan. Really appreciate that. Look, why did I write this book? Charles Taylor, the philosopher, in his A Secular Age, argues during the secular age, or rather an outcome, tragic outcomes of the secular age is the dislocation of identities, the end of convictions, the end of certainties. Now, look, I and you, being contemporaries, similar age, we are a product of that age, where having multiple identities, i.e., British, Westerners, despite Brexit, I'd like to think I'm still European, and a Bengali, I still like my shutkis from time to time. Those who are non-Bengalis won't get this joke, but I apologize. But on the other hand, we are Muslims also. And the reality is, growing up back in the early 1990s, we had to juggle those
identities. Yeah.
Those identities. We had to juggle them. And growing up here, educated here from primary school, high school, undergraduate, postgraduate learning, all meant there was an element of dislocation in me and those of my generation in terms of identities. We faced challenges.
Yes.
What did it mean to be Bengali? What did it mean to be Muslim?
Yes.
What actually did it mean to be British? What is Britishness anyway? What does it actually mean to be a Westerner? All these questions were bothering me too.
Right.
And I was looking for information that would address those issues. Unfortunately, I struggled, but I had a way out. Luckily, as a teenager, I spent 3 years studying Bengali language and literature. Right?
So you learned a bit of Sanskrit.
I was very lucky to have, not Sanskrit, but remember, Bengali language, its root is Sanskrit.
Yeah, that's right.
But I'm talking Bengali language and literature here in particular.
Yeah.
So, and I was lucky to have a teacher who was at a who was a teacher before she came to this country at a prominent school, Vikarun High School in Dhaka.
Right.
And so studying under her tutelage, if you like, opened up another world.
Right.
A literature that is so rich and has so much heritage in it that enabled me to read writings of Nazrul, Kazim al-Qureshi, Kaikobad, and a whole range of other Bengali writers, Bengali Muslim writers. And that was very important for me.
Right.
But there is other reasons. The other reasons are, if I may say so, historical.
Right.
Why I decide, after a personal quest for meaning, why I decided to write this. I didn't want to say, look, hold on a minute, leave it at that. I wanted to share this information with others because I went to Dhaka, ransacked libraries, research institutes, bookshops, collected information. I'll come back to that later.
Right.
But what I did was I started reading widely. And I divide my reading literature into 3 parts, if you don't mind. One is the writings of non-Muslim scholars of Bengal.
Right.
Who wrote about Bengal. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Secondly, Western historians who wrote about subcontinent as a whole. And my third category is Muslim historians who wrote about the subcontinent.
Right.
Now, I want to give you occasional examples here. I'm surrounded here by books.
Right.
Because, that's where it's easier than to talk. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
When we talk about Bengal in the 19th century and scholarship in Bengali language, literature, and history, R.C. Majumdar is a Indian historians.
Yeah.
But he's actually East Bengali. He's from Bangladesh originally.
From Bangladesh itself, right.
And here I've got a book, Glimpses of Bengal in the 19th century, written by him. This book does not have anything to say about the Muslim heritage of Bengal.
Interesting.
Okay. But I got another one here. This is published by the University of Kolkata. Right. This is called The History of Bengal, 1757 to 1905.
Right.
There is nothing in this volume, hefty volume, which is meant to be a textbook, advanced textbook for research students at Kolkata University, nothing to do with, no information about the Muslims of Bengal.
Given that the Muslims in Bengal were always the majority in the Indian subcontinent since, since nearly 800 years, yeah.
There you go. But another example I give you on the just this category.
Interesting.
The History of Bengal, Volume 2, 1200 to 1757.
Is that by Moharali or?
No. Edited by Sir Jadunath Sarkar.
Right.
Another doyen of Indian historians. R.C. Majumdar and Sir Jadunath Sarkar. These are, if you like Muslim equivalent, you're looking at in the 19th century, you have to say Tabari, Imam Tabari and Ibn Khaldun.
Wow.
So are you with me?
Yeah. Major historians of India.
Look, you cannot comment upon Aurangzeb unless you consult, for example, Jadunath Sarkar's works.
And that's 5 volumes he's written, that's right.
Not only 5 volumes, are many others that people don't know about.
Wow.
Because this man is a doyen on Aurangzeb. Now, in this volume, it's called the Muslim period. Are you with me so far? This volume is called the Muslim period. That's how many published by Dhaka University in
1930?
1948.
48. Okay.
1948, Dhaka University. Yeah. There is an irony here. We haven't got time to go into this. Because if you know the history of Dhaka University and if you know the history
under the British,
of Sir Salimullah, for a volume to be published by Dhaka University on the Muslim heritage of Bengal, the whole nearly over 500 pages of it, with only one Muslim contributor to the volume, and that is Abu Muhammad Habibullah.
Right.
The rest of them are not Muslim historians.
Right.
You see the problem we faced. I haven't finished. Now move on to the next bit.
Yeah.
Now, what about, you think, okay, the non-Muslim historians of Bengal are biased.
Yeah.
Perhaps they neglected the field. How about the Muslim historians of the subcontinent?
Yeah.
Well, look, I've got a couple of volumes here quickly because we are short of time, but I have got tons I can share with you.
Sure.
Look, Muhammad Mujib.
Yeah.
Very popular volume, The Indian Muslims. How many pages? Nearly 600 pages of it. In this volume, where is the Muslims of Bengal? I can't see them here because I've read the volume.
Right.
Inside out. Okay, quickly, another one. S.M. Ikram.
Yes, very well known.
Right? Yeah. Muslim civilization in India. He has got, in passing, on page 283 and 84, in passing, he touches upon Haji Shariatullah and Titumir.
Right.
That's it. That's Muslims of Bengal done. But I've got other examples. Final one.
Yeah.
I won't touch upon an intellectual history of Islam in India by Aziz Ahmed. I haven't got time.
Yeah.
I won't touch upon it. But this is an interesting one. A Pakistani historian.
Yeah.
I don't want to name him out of respect for him. Very eminent historian and scholar.
Yeah.
But out of respect for him, I don't want to quote him or give his name. But chapter 14 of his book, is, by the way, is called Muslim Renaissance in South Asia. And the role of Shah Waliullah and his successors. There is a chapter 14 is on scholars of Waliullah tradition. Here, what does he do? He actually categorically mentions that there was on the Darul Ulum Deoband is the only legacy of Shah Waliullah and his family's intellectual legacy. That is the only one. I'm quoting him from his book. I beg to differ. Very Hafizahullah, very great scholar. Because Same man has translated and published many other excellent books.
Yeah.
But he is clearly not aware of the fact that Shah Waliullah, his favorite student was Shah Abdul Aziz.
That's right.
But Shah Abdul Aziz, his classmate was Maulana Majduddin.
Right.
Two of the most senior students of Shah Waliullah. He is not aware that in Bengal there was a Waliullah tradition.
Right.
Where at Madrasatul Aliyah. Madrasatul Aliyah, better known as Kolkata Madrasa, was founded in 1780 by none other than Warren Hastings, the first Lieutenant Governor of Bengal. Now, I'm repeating myself here. 1780, it is the oldest madrasa in the history of the subcontinent. And Waliullah tradition. Deoband. Oh, Deoband was founded 1866, May 1866.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about 1780.
Right.
And Majduddin became the Mudarris al-Awwal.
So this is after Farangi Mahal, much later.
You know, look, first Governor General of India, Warren Hastings founded Madrasatul Aliyah with Majduddin, rahimahullah, with him as the Mudarris al-Awwal, the founding preceptor. So the Shah Waliullah tradition continued in Delhi and around that region with Shah Abdul Aziz, Shah Rafiuddin, and many others, Muhammad Ismail, and many others. But in Bengal, this tradition was continued by Majduddin and through Madrasatul Aliyah.
And he accepted the British rule as opposed to Deoband, which was...
This is a different question.
Okay.
You ask me that question during the Q&A, no problem. I'll give you answer.
Okay.
But I don't want to digress from what I'm doing here now, because then we usually go all over the place.
Tamam. Okay, so continue.
Yeah. So these are the Muslim historians, okay? Both Indian, both Pakistani, and I cannot see Bengal is not there in their works.
Right.
Even, for example, Sayyid Ahmed Baralvi, right? The founder of Tariqa Muhammadiyah.
That's right.
Right? He what, you know, Maulana Karamat Ali Jaunpuri was his murid. Karamat Ali Jaunpuri continued that tradition also in Bengal during the 19th century. We don't know about it. So Shah Waliullah tradition, the Baralvi, when I say Baralvi, I don't mean, you know, Ahmad Raza Khan, okay? I'm talking about Sayyid Ahmed Baralvi. Let's be very clear and avoid confusion.
A different person, yeah.
Both, totally different, because the Mujaddid I'm talking about, the Mujahid I'm talking about.
That's right.
Yeah, he actually continued, both of them, their tradition continued in Bengal. But in India-centric work, in Pakistan-centric work, these traditions doesn't exist. I can't see them in these works. Now, I want to move swiftly to my third category, which is Western historians. Now, look, I have got tons of information here. I don't know where to begin and where to end, but I'll give you a couple of examples as an illustration.
Yeah.
The Great Men of India.
Yes.
By L.F. Rushbrook Williams. Right? More than 600 pages of it.
Yeah.
You've got all kinds of personalities here, all eminent in their own right.
Yeah.
Not a single Bengali. Why not?
Okay.
Why not? Because he should know better. He was at Cambridge University. A fellow of All Souls. Okay? He should know better. I am a student. This was a scholar. Now, Peter Hardy.
Yes.
Muslims of British India. Bengal. I'm going to, fair due to him, he does mention Bengal quite a bit. Because he's dealing with British India. And you cannot deal with British India unless you cover Bengal.
Yeah, because the British rule, 150 years, the capital was in Calcutta. It was in Bengal, right?
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
Delhi
even
was only
so,
50 years maximum.
Even so, it doesn't. Look here. Wilfred Cantwell Smith. Modern Islam in India.
Right.
A very important text.
Yeah.
Muslims of Bengal get mentioned in passing. Look, I am here mentioning another one.
Okay, so you made your point. So
What I'm trying
is
to say is,
Mhm.
Muslims of Bengal seem to have fallen between several stools.
Right.
And when I was studying this, when I observed all of this, I thought, hold on a minute. Can I write, not being a known scholar, can I write an
Something.
introductory work
Yeah.
for younger people, younger generation, in a language and format that enables them to access this heritage, and hopefully some of them will benefit from it and pursue, because my book, The Muslim Heritage of Bengal, has got extensive bibliography and references for them to continue their research afterwards, should they decide to do so.
Right.
But my final reason for writing this book, if I may say so, and share, is my family history. Because what happened is, one of my ancestors, Inayatullah Khan, served the Mughals in Sylhet as its Faujdar. When I say Faujdar, let me make this clear. Because during the Mughal period and during the British period, there was two strands of the administration.
Right.
The administrations of the government went into two major strands.
Right.
You take the military side aside.
Yeah.
You had the criminal administration, the law enforcement side, and then there was the civil administration.
Yes.
Faujdars were local administrators who actually were responsible for law and order, whereas the Dewanis, for example, Kolkata's Sadar Dewani Adalat was actually civil courts, whereas his Faujdari courts were actually criminal courts.
Right.
So this is a personal, something personal I share, because I saw there was a deeper history here which needed engagement, and I couldn't find any work on these areas.
Fair enough.
Hence
so that
this book.
inspired you to write this thing. Okay, so moving along.
Yes,
so,
combination of reasons.
Combination of reasons. So moving on. So what did you find? I mean, people will say, okay, it's just a regional history sort of thing that people didn't realize, people didn't think it was significant. It just so happened to be the most populous part of the Muslim world for 800 years. Is there anything special? Is there anything unique? Was there anything?
Look, but the Muslims of Bengal led subcontinent, led the whole of the subcontinent throughout its history. Let me explain this.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Every single Mughal ruler since the conquest of Bengal by the Mughals.
Before that, from Delhi Sultanate and Bakht al-Khilji, and maybe
I don't want to even go that far. I don't want to go to Sultanate period. I'll start earlier. I'll start with a mid 16th century, when during the reign of Akbar, Bengal was conquered by the Mughals.
That's right.
After that, the Mughals always ensured a member of the Mughal family was made the Subadar, the provincial governor of Bengal, even though it was the frontier province. Why? Because at that time, Bengal was the richest, the wealthiest province in the whole of the subcontinent.
Why? Well, I mean, what was so special about that place?
Trade, commerce.
Right, because of the delta.
It was a meeting point. A meeting point. The Portuguese were there. The Dutch were there. The British went late. Well before that, you had others there. It was a meeting for Indian Ocean, opened up Bengal.
Yeah, so the Bay and the Gangetic plains sort of helped trade and so. But how about
And so Tara Chand, Muhammad Ishaq, all the other historians will tell you, even the Arabs were coming to the coastal regions of the subcontinent during the time of Omar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu. Right?
Yeah, they had to get off there to go on the route to Cambodia and to China, right? Because it was
if you are going to trade, you have to get out. Look, I can't trade from my home. Well, in these days, people can do it online, right?
Yeah, go to Alibaba.com.
Alibaba.com or some other .com, right? The reality is, but in those days,
right,
you had to get off your backside, and either get on a donkey,
or a ship, or a boat,
or on a boat.
There
was no other way of trading and exchanging goods and services.
Right.
Naturally, Bengal became a hotbed and a center point, which is why East India Company had its headquarters in Bengal.
Right.
Remember, East India Company at its height was the Microsoft of its day.
Of course, it was
the
the most
largest
powerful.
corporation in the world.
That's right.
So why would you want to go to other places when everything was in Bengal? You know, Hooghly River opened up Kolkata, and trade boats could come here.
Right. So looking at the actual Islamic heritage or Muslim heritage. Okay, so let's talk about that. So we talked about, okay, fine, strategically, location, blah, blah, blah. So traditionally, we know in the south, it was it was the Yemenis tradition, that sort of the missionaries who helped with the spread of Islam from the south. And it was the Turkish from the north, about the Khilji, as the Turks went west, who eventually became the Seljuks and so on. So those who came down south and then east essentially became, the Tughluks and the various dynasties eventually, what we see. But the Khilji opened up the door. So what was
Bakhtiyar Khilji actually was before Muhammad Tughlaq.
Yep.
Remember, Tughlaq actually, yes,
yeah.
he reigned during the 14th century.
Right,
and
okay.
Muhammad Bakhtiyar Khilji, we're talking about early 13th century.
Okay, so that's the conquest. In terms of the indigenization of Islam and Muslim, what's so special? What's so unique? How would you say it's different from Delhi or from Madras or what and so on? So before we come to the modern times,
that's true. But look, you're talking about the numbers, number of people there, and their openness,
right,
and creativity. Let me explain this. Let me explain this, because what happens is Bengal, before the arrival of Muslims, Bengal was being ruled by the Shena dynasty.
Yeah, the various
what in Bengali known as the Shena Samrajyo, right?
Right.
And before the Shenas, who were from South India, and didn't speak Bangla, but they were the first who actually imposed the caste system and the notion of racial superiority or social stratification, as the sociologists would say, into Bengal. Before that, this whole notion was alien to Bengal. Why? Because before the Shenas, Bengal was being ruled by the Pala Samrajyo. What I mean by that is Pala dynasty. And the Palas were Buddhists, who did not believe in the idea of social stratification. They were very open-minded and very learned, the Pala rulers.
So that helped.
Yes, and that's where my next point is. When the Muslim rulers came here, Buddhists were being oppressed by the Shenas, and they saw Muslims as liberators.
Liberators, right.
And they embraced Islam en masse.
Right. And it's more of a rice civilization as opposed to a breaded civilization in the north.
Economically speaking, that is partly right, because what happens is, but that was positive, because it was actually, if you like, it was the bread basket of the subcontinent. Why do you think the Mughals said a family member always to Bengal? Because they had to feed everybody else. Rice in its such a large quantity was being grown in East Bengal.
Right, but don't you think that was a policy of the Mughals to clear the forests, get rice cultivation? And this is the secular arguments of folks like Richard Eaton and others who would say it was an economic exploitation. So the environment, so get rid of the forest, put in the rice paddy fields, tax it, and you get a great source of money from jute and from rice. And
look, if I was the Mughals, I'd be doing exactly what they did. You could not grow rice in Sindh, my friend.
Right.
Sindh is all Sindh, the province of Sindh in modern Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's deserts.
It's arid.
Arid. You can't grow rice in those climate. You have to grow it in delta land, and so East Bengal was ripe for that.
Right.
And naturally, the Mughals would do that. If you and I lived there, we would do the same.
Right.
So to say that was an exploitation is being unfair to the Mughals.
Fair enough. Okay, so moving on to the actual dawah in terms of religious scholars, religious contribution, the architecture, was there anything different, unique, also?
Look, I walked around Dhaka, right? And Sylhet and Comilla and other places in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
The whole country is replete with Mughal architecture.
Right.
I've been there and visited those places,
Right.
because the Mughals loved Bengal. Many of them used to come out for their during seasonal visits. It was their hideout.
Of course. Yeah.
Like in this country, in the summer, we all head towards Lanzarote and Mallorca and other places.
Yeah. Some of the Mughals went to Kashmir. Some of them went to Bengal. You're saying.
Absolutely, Darjeeling and other places.
Yeah.
That's where they chilled out. That's understandable. But what happened is, when they went there, they actually patronized local cultures, local writers, and this is where, remember, from the beginning of 13th century to 1837, during that period, I repeat, from the beginning of the 13th century to 1837, the language of administration in Bengal was Zabane Farsi.
Yeah, so Farsi, yeah.
Right?
That's how we get the
language,
documents,
Persian language.
That's right.
Right? You, anytime during that period, you wanted to become an administrator, a lawyer, a pleader, a teacher, scholar, you had no option except to learn Farsi.
And what are the names of some of these? Were there some great scholars, Quranic scholars, Hadith scholars? This is prior to the British. What are we looking at? Before Siraj
I'll give you a few examples.
Robert Clive in India. Yeah.
I'll give you a few examples, but we haven't got enough time to cover that in detail.
Yeah.
Well, because look, I've got here a PhD thesis submitted at Dhaka University, nearly 500 pages of it, called Bangladesh Farsi Sahitya.
Right. Okay. So
history of Persian literature in Bengal, and in this case, Bangladesh.
Right.
And this is another one here called Pochim Bonge Farsi Sahitya, West Persian literature in West Bengal.
Okay, so we know that Persian was very strong in India anyway. It became a center of Persianite language and culture. But in Bengal,
it was even stronger.
It wasn't. Why so? Why?
Simply because it was all the scholars, from Alaul Haq, Nur Qutub Alam, during the Sultanate period, the Mughal period. You've got a Qazi Fakir Muhammad, Hazrat Maulana, Qazi Fakir Muhammad, the father of Nawab Abdul Latif. He wrote, I have a copy at home. I haven't got it handy. I should have brought it here. It's in my study room.
Right.
It's called a Jami wa Tawarik. More than 300 pages in Persian, a history of the Muslim world from pre-creation. Okay. So from pre-creation to his own lifetime, all in Farsi. Right. This book was published in 1836, and it was reprinted in Lucknow, and all over subcontinent, and the ulama said it was an amazing contribution at that time. Okay, but I'll give you another example quickly. And this Abdul Ghaffar Nassak, he's in my book, Muslim Heritage of Bengal, chapter number 16. He was the younger brother of Nawab Abdul Latif. He was a contemporary of Mirza Ghalib. He is, along with Mirza Ghalib, one of the greatest poets, Urdu poets of the subcontinent.
Okay.
And he wrote 2 books. One on a history of Persian poets. Tazkirat-e Muashirin.
Interesting.
Is sitting in Bengal. A history of Persian poets of Persia and the subcontinent. A big thick book in Persian. A Bengali sitting in Bengal, right?
Yeah.
But he was also one of the greatest of Urdu poets.
Interesting.
So both languages were being cultivated in Bengal extensively. Let me tell you here quickly. In this PhD thesis by late Professor Muhammad Abdullah, who I had the honor of speaking over the phone before he died several times, and then managed to obtain all his books from Dhaka after he passed away, because being a part-time detective, I tracked his son down in Dhaka and said, I need all of his books. Here, look, this whole book is divided zilla-wise, district-wise in Bangladesh. And what does he do? He shows you here extensively how Persian literature was being cultivated in Dhaka, here in Sylhet, Chattogram, Faridpur, Kumilla, Borishal, Momishing, Pabna, Rajshahi, all over Bangladesh.
All over the Bengal region, yeah, Bangladesh in particular.
No, East Bengal.
East Bengal.
What is today Bangladesh.
Right, okay.
And during the British period known as the province of East Bengal and Assam.
Assam, right. Okay, so how about in terms of religious contribution to the religious sciences, Quran, Tafsir, and were there any women as well? Were there any women teachers, so to speak?
I have got several women in my book.
Okay.
Okay, let's take this point first before we go to the religious scholarship. Because now, first woman in the history of the subcontinent to receive the title of Nawab from the British government was Faizunnisa Chowdhury from Kumilla.
Interesting, okay.
Begum Ruqayya, who's also in my book, is the first science fiction writer of all time.
Interesting, okay.
Because she wrote a book, small booklet, in which she assumed that all the men will stay at home and do household chores and women will go out and work.
Modern day world, right?
Yeah? and amazing. This woman used to pray 5 times a day, established one of the earliest girls' school in Kolkata with funds left by her husband, who died young, unfortunately, in Bhagalpur. I've got a Manujan Khanam, amazing lady. She bequeathed, through her Waqafnama after she died, she left her wealth to her brother, Muhammad Muhsin.
Right.
And after Muhammad Muhsin's death, he prepared, just before his death, he prepared an Waqafnama.
Right.
And all his wealth, he was a zamindar.
Right.
That money was used by the British government to establish 3 major institutions in Bengal. Right. Dhaka Madrasa, of which the founding Mudarris al-Awwal became who? The great Maulana Ubaidullah Sarwardi.
Interesting.
The father of Allama Sir Abdullah Sarwardi.
Interesting, okay.
And Sir Hassan Sarwardi, the first Muslim Chancellor of Kolkata University.
Okay.
And also, so you see the women went far behind. The daughters of Nawab Abdul Latif, for example, wrote fantastic books, translated books from Urdu into English. Ibrate Aina is a beautiful book written by one of his daughters.
Fair enough. But these are elite women at the end of the day. They're not the mass at the end of the day.
I agree with you, because you see, mass education in those days
didn't exist.
Didn't exist. So the reality is the concept of mass education in subcontinent doesn't exist. But having said that, I have only read today, before we started this session, an article in the Times of India.
Tamam.
Things haven't changed much as far as the Muslims of Bengal subcontinent is concerned.
No, it hasn't.
Literacy-wise, it's shocking. I read this article today afterwards. Check it up. Article, according to the Sakar committee, which was formed nearly 15 years ago in India, to look at why the literacy rate among the Indian Muslims was so poor, and it made so many recommendations. 15 years later, nothing has changed.
Unfortunately.
This is the ummah of a prophet who said, Talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli Muslim. Muslimin wa Muslimat.
That's right.
And I give him credit for adding that bit. Yeah, Muslim wa Muslim. If he were to stop at kulli Muslim, would say, you know what? Okay, every Muslim should seek knowledge. But the Prophet _والسلام, did not made it clear. He said both men and women.
Exactly.
He says you must seek knowledge. And we as a community, as a whole of the subcontinent, we are not living up to this prophetic exhortation.
Of course not. So going back to, so we had some great scholars and so on. So now, then the British came. We know about Nawab Siraj-Dowlah, and the British implanted themselves. So let's talk about this period between British rule, who made Bengal their capital for 150 years, and then it went to Delhi. Now, during that time, we had the Caliphate movement, we had Deoband, we had all these great anti-British, anti-colonial sort of scholars and so on. So where did Bengal fit in all of this, which is very, very important?
Very good question.
You touched upon the Shah Wali Allah, which I'm very surprised. The two shapes of Shah Wali Allah tradition. You have the northern Shah Wali Allah tradition that we know, which is Delhi-centric. But I didn't know about the eastern Shah Wali Allah tradition, which was more accommodating to the British. Again, we're going to come back to that another time. But so here we are. This is the British rule up until independence of Britain, up until the independence of Britain. Bismillah. We've got about 10 minutes for that before we open up Q&A.
No problem. You know, you have just opened up a Pandora's box.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, the reason is
because this is the crux of your argument, isn't it?
This is the subject of my next book, of which 70% is complete.
Okay.
This is the 70% is complete. It is probably 600 to 800 page book.
Right.
Right. This is exactly what it deals with, the Muslims in British India.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That is the subject, and we can sit here and talk for hours.
Mm-hmm.
But all I want to say here is give you a couple of examples. During the British period,
yes,
intellectual activities were taking place in subcontinent through a number of select institutions.
Okay, go ahead. This is important.
One of them was the Delhi College.
Right.
So people like Zakaullah, Munshi Zakaullah, were teaching there. Zakaullah was a contemporary and friend of Sir Syed Ahmed Khan.
Right.
Right. But there was at the other side.
Okay, go ahead.
So if you read Francis Robinson, you're gonna get a NWP-centric history of the subcontinent.
So Francis will always
during the British rule.
Exactly. Francis will always emphasize that perspective.
Yes. So, but there is another tradition, I'm saying. And the tradition is the Fort William College, which is where the Orientalists were at work, seriously at work, in Bengal. At that time, on the outskirts of Kolkata. Now it's part of the whole lot. Are you with me?
Why is that? Is it because of the archives of the Mughals were in Calcutta? Because when
we'll come to that in a second.
Okay, that's an important point.
But there is also the other institution is Madrasatul Aliyah, Kolkata Madrasa.
Okay.
Now these two institutions played a critical role in terms of intellectual activities in Bengal during the British period.
Okay.
Now, two different roles, but both of them played a critical role.
Okay.
For example, standardizing Sanskrit, producing Bengali first Bengali grammar books, first Bengali dictionaries, all happened where? At Fort William College. At Fort William College, at the same time, you had Arabists and Persian scholars working on the writings of some of the greatest Persian scholars and historians of the subcontinent and other parts of the world. Also at Fort William College.
Right. Okay. They weren't doing it in Delhi. They weren't doing it in
the three. They were, of course. You had local, privately funded madrasas.
Yeah.
They may have been. They were clearly teaching religious sciences.
Yeah.
But those attempts were not academic exercises.
Right. Whereas in
Fort
William College
academic
it was.
work.
Right. Okay.
Fort William College, these were serious work being done there on Bengali language, on Sanskrit, on Persian, on Urdu, on a whole range of fields.
It's because it was the capital and the sources were there. The British
the funding was there.
The funding was there, right?
The British government was funding the Fort William
capital,
College.
Right? So they're making the money and they're putting the college, putting in.
And we have to give credit where it is.
Right.
Okay. But the negativity about British rule.
Yep.
Sometimes frightens me.
Yep.
I say yes, it has its negativity, and I am in my book, the biography of Nawab Abdul Latif.
Yep.
I am highly critical of some of the British policies.
Right.
One example quickly I give you, the famine of 1866, Orissa famine.
Yep.
5 to 6 million people perished in Bengal and east coast of India. And I hold two people responsible for it. Sir Cecil Beaton, the Lieutenant Governor of Bengal, and Sir John Lawrence, the Governor General of India. It happened under their watch. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. But on the flip side, the scholarly activities through the funding of Kolkata Madrasa, the Fort William College, and many other institutions. We can't actually ignore that side.
Can you just
What
quickly
I'm
talk about
saying
the,
is
what was
we
so
need to
special
we
about
need
the
to
Kolkata Madrasa as opposed to Deoband? Did they teach English?
or
Did they teach philosophy, kalam, or other things? Was it quite different from some of the northern madrasas or something like that, or southern madrasas?
look, an exhaustive,
Mhm.
closely a close reading of the sources
Mhm.
and critical history of the Kolkata Madrasa has not been produced in
Right.
English to this day. Look,
Right.
the only, I give you a quick example.
Yeah.
Sir Azizul Haq,
Yeah.
right? He was the vice chancellor of Kolkata University,
Right.
and he wrote a history and problems of Muslim education in Bengal. Okay.
Right.
He was himself a student of Kolkata Madrasa.
Right.
And his account of the history of the Kolkata Madrasa is faulty.
Right. Okay.
That is the problem I am having to deal with here. When you talk about sources,
Right.
the problem is what is supposed to be primary sources
Yeah.
are problematic, and I'm having to rewrite the history of Madrasa, Kolkata Madrasa, using for a Bangla and a Urdu and other sources.
Yeah.
Including English sources. And
Right.
who actually preserved these sources, if I may ask?
The British.
Do you know the answer is? Thank you very much. Good
Yeah.
man. Thanks to the British,
Yeah.
those sources are still extant.
Yeah, they're in the
If
British
it
Museum.
had not been the British Library,
Yeah.
God bless British Library, I say.
You don't sound like a lefty now.
Oh, sorry?
You don't sound
If
like
you
a
are
lefty or BLM or
if you are on the right or you are on the left, I say you are wrong. If you're, what do we need to be?
So you're not into decolonial.
وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس.
No,
Yeah?
yes, true.
أمة وسط. Let's be in the middle if we can.
If we can, khair inshallah.
If
Okay,
we can.
so moving on to there's a lot of things happening. British rule, Calcutta Madrasa, and then we have this, the mutiny, the Sepoy mutiny. We've got about 5 minutes before we are thinking that. And then we start the whole. Your argument is in the book that a lot of the anti-British movement, anti-colonial sort of stuff started in this region, as opposed to what we normally know. Is that correct?
Partially correct.
Very good.
Partially correct. Let me quickly explain. Remember the interaction, as soon as the British, after the Battle of Plassey, right? Palashir Juddor Pore, after that, what happened was, the Muslims of the subcontinent had a major problem on their hand.
Of course, yeah.
How do they, having ruled the subcontinent for such a long time, how do they reconcile themselves to a foreign power now?
Yeah.
They had to look at the whole issue politically, economically, culturally, educationally, religiously.
Yeah.
The problem is the ulama went into their shells.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, they went into their shells. Understandably, why? But not everybody went into their shells.
Okay.
Some said no. We need to interact with these rulers of ours and make the most of the situation we find ourselves in. Here, I give credit to two individuals.
Please,
two great reformers. One is Nawab Abdul Latif, rahimahullah, and the other one is Sir Syed Ahmed Khan, rahimahullah.
Okay.
These two men were true visionaries.
Right.
As opposed to, they operated at the time that Deobandis were forming their madrasa.
Right.
Right. At the same time, they were operating when the traditional ulama like Maulana Karamat Ali, Jaunpuri, Haji Shariatullah, and Titumir and others were operating in Bengal. What they did was a reconciliation process. Right. But there is a difference here. If you give me 30 seconds.
Yeah, come.
Between the two people, Nawab Abdul Latif is a pioneer out of the two. Now here I am turning received wisdom on its head.
Okay, so up
to now, everybody says Sir Syed Ahmed Khan is the most important leader of the Muslims and for the Muslims in the subcontinent during the 19th century. I am contesting this for the first time and say no. His vision came from Nawab Abdul Latif, who was 10 years younger than him, but Abdul Latif was the only Muslim reformer of the 19th century who was fluent in reading, writing, and speaking English.
Which is an important thing, because obviously Deoband didn't accept English. Aligarh later on accepted English, right?
No, Sir Syed was inspired. Sir Syed traveled from Aligarh. He traveled from Aligarh, and from Ghazipur. He traveled from all these places and went to Kolkata. In 1863, Abdul Latif hosted him in Kolkata. And he took him to Asiatic Society of Bengal. He gave him a tour of Kolkata and said to, at that time, Sir Syed was the principal Sadar Amin, okay?
Right.
In Ghazipur.
Right.
Later, he shifted to Aligarh. At that time, Nawab Abdul Latif was deputy magistrate and deputy collector in Alipur, a suburb of Kolkata.
Right.
Both Sir Syed did not know English.
Interesting.
Right? So he relied on Abdul Latif in his interaction with who? With the lieutenant governors, with the governor generals, all the policy makers. Abdul Latif was pulling the strings left, right, center.
Right.
But
we don't know about him.
Pakistani historians, Indian historians, Western historians completely neglected Abdul Latif. Once this biography of Abdul Latif comes, Bismillahi ta'ala, a lot of historians will have to revisit their works.
Fair enough.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, so you've got that, and then moving on to the actual early 20th century or late 19th century, some of the actual resistant folks. So we're talking about the Muslim League, emergence of the Muslim League. Would you want to talk about that?
Yes, quickly. Well, look, if Abdul Latif led the way and was, if you like, Hadi-e-Zaman, which actually was a title of Maulana Karamat Ali Jaunpuri.
Yes.
Title they gave him, Hadi-e-Zaman. But I call him my Hadi-e-Zaman. The reason is, if Abdul Latif did not exist, we'd be in big trouble, the subcontinental Muslims.
Right. How so?
They'd still be in a rebellious mood, and the policy of the government, British government towards the Muslims would not be changed. This man was instrumental in it. But moving on to your point, 20th century, early 20th century, the Hadi-e-Zaman for the Muslims of the subcontinent during the early 20th century became Nawab Sir Salimullah. Salimullah was the grandson of Nawab Sir Abdul Ghani, a great zamindar of Dhaka. And it was when Salimullah saw the Muslims of the subcontinent at the beginning of the 20th century was all over the place.
Right.
Because the response to the Congress was not united. Congress was founded in 1885.
Right.
And the Muslims were all over the place when the Congress was founded. Who founded the Congress? It was the Bengali Babus who founded it. Not guys from Delhi, from Lahore.
What do you mean by the Bengali bubbles? You mean those guys who lungis and wearing
I mean the Bengali Hindu elites, the Brahmins.
Right, the Brahmins were founded the Muslim League, or
Surendranath Banerjee and all the Tagores and everybody else.
Right.
They led it. And Abdul Latif used to rub shoulders with all of them.
Right.
These people were his friends, colleagues. So what he said was, he objected to the Congress, because the Congress wanted him, the founders of Congress wanted Abdul Latif on board. If they had him on board, fait accompli. All the Muslims would gradually come on board with the Congress.
Right.
Abdul Latif objected. He says, no, I don't agree with the direction the Congress is going.
Right.
Sir Syed picked it up afterwards.
Interesting.
And what happens is, Sir Salimullah, beginning of the 20th century, picked up the baton from Nawab Abdul Latif and said, we need to unite as a community, otherwise the Congress will sideline us, because if it goes to election, we'll be wiped out.
Of course. And then
so what did he do? He called everybody over to Dhaka at his Shahbag garden. He spent, from one estimate is 2 million rupees, 2 lakh rupees. The other estimate is up to 5 lakh rupees. entertained up to 2,000-3,000 Muslim leaders. They were all there, you name it. The Ali brothers were there. You know, there is not a, you know, Shibli Nurmani was there, you name it.
In Dhaka.
They were all there.
Right.
And he said to them, if you do not unite, all this money I'm spending is wasted.
Right.
So he proposed that they should establish All India Muslim Federacy. That was Salimullah's proposal.
Right.
After extensive discussion, that is in 1906,
Right.
December 1906, collectively, through Ijma, if you like, they agreed that they will call it All India Muslim League.
Interesting.
Now, without the Muslims of Bengal, they would not be Pakistan today, and they would certainly not be Bangladesh either.
Right. Interesting. And obviously, and all this sort of led a number of events that eventually led to the British, you know, Gandhi and Abu Kalam Azad and so on, Nehru and
even during that period, Bengali Muslims led the subcontinent.
Yeah.
Look, Hussain Shahid Sarwardi, right?
Because of
Prime
time,
Minister
I think we'll probably have to come to another. I mean, there's so much to discuss, obviously, about the subject. You can't really do justice for 800 history or so. Look, I mean, it's just an introduction. People need to realize the Bengal region is a very rich history and valuable contribution to make. And given the large numbers, we have a question here. Now we're going to open up for questions very quickly. I got a question on the chat. Sorry to cut you short there. Can you tell us, this is from, I'm not sure who it is, but anyway, can you tell us who the other Hindu Bengali intellectuals were? Ram Mohan Roy, who studied in madrasas, were influenced in thought by their study of Islam.
Right, okay. Because you see, during the 19th century, during the 18th and 19th century Bengal, when I'm saying Bengal, I'm essentially meaning Kolkata and Dhaka. Because Dhaka was the capital of East Bengal.
Yeah.
And Kolkata was the capital of whole of the subcontinent at that time. So look, within the Hindu community, you had what they call the awakening or Hindu Renaissance. Right. Ram Mohan Roy is regarded as the father of Hindu Renaissance. Right.
In India.
Ram Mohan Roy.
Modern India,
yes, as modern India.
Not Shivji. We're talking about modern India,
Yes, modern India. But Ram Mohan Roy is an interest.
Oops. Hello. We've got technical problems there, folks, I'm afraid. Hello. Hello. Sorry, folks. It looks like we got some technical problems. I'm going to try again. Yeah, I think we've lost our speaker. Hopefully he'll connect back in. Okay, no, I think he's got some technical problems. Right, let me just try Mojlum again, sorry. Good old mobile phones. Right, where is it?
is the Vodafone voicemail.
Yeah, I think, folks, we'll probably have to end it here unless I can bring him back. Let me just check. Is he connecting back? No, it doesn't seem to be the case. Try one more time. Yeah, Mojlum. Yeah, you need to reconnect again. I think you've left the.
My son's just checking and he says, I'm on Virgin Media and we're connecting we're struggling with internet connectivity.
Ah, okay. So we'll have to end it here then. Okay.
Looks like unfortunately we're gonna have to call it a day because I'm looking at the monitor here. It's flashing green when it should be orange.
Tamam. Okay, no problem, inshallah. Folks, sorry.
I really apologize. Beyond my control.
No problem. Yeah, it happens.
Oh, it's back. My son is saying it's back.
Oh, he's back now. Try and connect again.
Let me see.
Please try and connect. Yeah.
Let's give it one try.
One more try. Yeah. Just hold on, guys.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, that is one of the. Is it back?
Is it back?
Yeah, he's trying to log in again to your site.
Yeah.
The internet connectivity, I think, is there now, but he needs to link up to you now.
Yeah. We're just going to try and get back. Just give us a couple of minutes. 1 minute. We've got a good number of questions coming through. No, nothing's come through.
Unfortunately, it's gone, I'm afraid.
It's gone, it's fine. Okay, let's leave it.
Apologies, Mizan.
No problems, inshallah.
Please do thank everybody on my behalf.
No problem, inshallah. Take care.
Barakallah.
Barakallah. Sorry, folks. I'm so sorry about he's got the internet connectivity problems. He'd like to apologize. We've got some great questions. What I'll do, I'll send those questions to Mojlum. We've got some questions from the Bengali Muslim had very good research. He did highlight some of the gaps. This is from Professor Malik. That's why Pakistan became a popular creed owing to the economic cultural issues. Another question. Why didn't the Bengali Muslims, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we'll have to end it now. I'd like to thank everyone. Apologize for the disconnection. We couldn't get but it happens, qadarullah. And inshallah, stay tuned for our session tomorrow. Tomorrow it's Pakistani Independence Day. So Mubarak to those Pakistani heritage and celebrating it. We've got a fantastic session tomorrow. We're going to be looking at what Pakistan today, what would Allama Iqbal think of Pakistan today, and we're honored and grateful to have Professor Malik from University of Bath. We have Iqbal Salahuddin, who's one of the grandsons of Allama Iqbal, and we also have Brother Murtaza Shibla, who's from Kashmir, an expert and activist on the whole Kashmir issue. So without further ado, thank you so much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.